If you read the Quran, you will be able to come across the stories of many prophets and their families. And as we read and understand, we will come to know that these noble prophets never asked for worldly success for themselves or for their descendants. None advised their sons to work hard to become wealthy or to succeed in this life as many of today's Muslims do. Instead, what did they want from their children? They emphasized to their children that the primary and most essential goal of their lives was to be true to Allah, their Lord, and not to die except in a state of surrender to Him. May Allah help us follow the example of these noble prophets when we advise our children. One of the du'as asking Allah for good offspring is mentioned in the Quran. It says, Rabbana hablana min azwajina wa zurriyatina qurrata ayun, which means, our Lord, grant us spouses and offspring who will be the comfort of our eyes. Here Allah Himself is showing us that it is the right thing to ask for a life partner and children who will bring us happiness, peace, comfort and satisfaction. Yes, a Muslim parent should desire both the good of this world and the good of the hereafter for his or her child. But if a choice is to be made between these two, we must be sensible and remember that the life to come is eternal and it is the most important goal for a Muslim. In practical terms, this may mean giving up or leaving something which seems fine or good for the child in this dunya, but it may lead him to unhappiness in the hereafter. But if we constantly ask Allah for guidance in all our affairs, then inshallah we will be able to know what is good in everlasting perspective and what is good only temporarily and materially. It is of course the desire of every parent to have good and noble children who will grow up to be a source of strength and moral support for their aging parents. No one desires to have children who grow up selfish, to abandon their parents or throw them into old age homes, or keep them like a piece of furniture somewhere in the corner of their house. But the dismal fact is this is what is happening today. All people are neglected, uncared for, or dumped into some old age home by their own children. And this is happening even among Muslims. A'udhu billah. Especially when the Quran clearly states, your Lord has decreed that you worship none but Him and be good to your parents. Whether one or both of them reach old age at your side, do not say to them a rough word, nor repulse them, but address them with respectful speech, and out of compassion, lower to them the wing of humility and say, my Lord, have mercy upon them as they cared for me in childhood. But unless we educate our children regarding the Quran and inculcate in them the right knowledge of Deen, how would they ever know that such a commandment exists? Before we expect anything from our children, my brothers and sisters, we must remember that as Muslims, we have certain duties towards them. That is, the child has certain rights over his parents, which the parents are obligated to fulfill before they expect anything in return. One of the most important rights of the child, which I would like to put forward first, is the right of the child to have a good mother, a noble and pious mother. From the start, this is one of the most important things. A child who will have a mother who would not only feed him or her milk, but also feed Iman. And when does this happen? This will happen when Muslim men go beyond beauty and money and choose a wife primarily for her noble virtue, which would assist in rearing good children. When a man chooses a wife, he should look for a woman who will be a good and desirable mother for his kids to come. And if every man were to make this his priority, then every woman would surely give her deen more importance, and every child would be born into a blessed home, inshallah. Another right of the child, which is stated in the Quran as, and the mothers shall breastfeed their children for 2 full years for those desiring to complete the term of breastfeeding. So mothers here are encouraged to breastfeed their children for their secure and wholesome entry into this world from the world of the womb. It gives the child a sense of belonging. It is not necessary that the mother has to nurse the child herself. A wet nurse can also be hired for this purpose. The child also has the right to having a good name. It is the duty of his or her parents to give him a name which has a good meaning to it and which instills a feeling of dignity and self-worth. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that on the day of judgment, you will be called by your names and by your father's names. So give yourselves good names. Another very important right of the child is the right to kindness. Practically every parent provides their children with food, shelter, clothing, and many other needs. But as Muslim parents, we should remember that we also have to be kind and affectionate to our children, as we learn from our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would kiss his grandchildren and openly display his affection for them. Even when he greeted his daughter Fatima, he would kiss her. In fact, once a Sahabi, Al-Aqra ibn Habis, saw Rasulullah kiss his grandson Hassan and place him on his lap. On seeing this, Al-Aqra said, "I have 10 children and I have never kissed any of them." The Prophet ﷺ glanced at him and said, "The one who is not merciful will not be shown mercy." May Allah help us to be kind and affectionate towards our children as shown by our beloved Prophet. The right to education is yet another important right in a child's life. Of course, the mother and father are the two primary educators of the child, but since formal education involves expenditure, it is the duty of the father to see that his child or his children acquire good and beneficial knowledge, which includes good religious education as well. As the Prophet ﷺ said, a father gives his child nothing better than a good education. Of course, this includes both sons and daughters, as Islam does not restrict education as the exclusive right of the male child. In fact, it encourages parents to spend on their daughters and bring them up well, as these girls will move on to be future mothers and play a major role in molding their children, in other words, the whole society. These are a few duties, dear brothers and sisters, which we owe to our children as parents. Besides, we ourselves being good role models for them to follow and look up to. Because children do not do what you tell them to. They simply follow what they see us do. So if we tell our children it is wrong to lie, and then they see us lying, then our children are bound to follow what they're seeing, rather than what we are advising them to do. It is only when we sow good seeds can we expect to reap a good harvest. Similarly, only if we fulfill our duties towards our children, constantly praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for their right guidance, can we expect any good from them in return. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all our offspring with right guidance and strong iman, and may there be a coolness to our eyes in this dunya and our path towards Jannah in the hereafter. Ameen. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.